1935 to 1938. Cleveland, Ohio, the Great Depression. While the world looked to Eliot Ness, the man who took down Capone, to save them, a monster, dismembering bodies in the shadows of Kingsbury Run. They call him the Mad Butcher. The paper said he was a fiend hiding in the mud of the shanty towns. That is the Varnish. In Case File 71, we audit the architecture of the act. You don't perform surgical disarticulation in a mud hut. Today, we look for the missing laboratory and expose the logic of a protected predator. Point 1. The missing tool. The infrastructure of death. Let's audit the bodies. These weren't hacks. Again, these weren't hacks. These were clean surgical decapitations and dismemberships, often performed while the victim was still alive. Look at point 1, the missing tool. To do what this killer did, you need more than a knife. Again, to do what this killer did, you need more than a knife. You need a drain. You need gallons of running water to wash away the blood of a human body. You need a specialized table, surgical saws, and total privacy. The police looked in the Hoovervilles, the shacks of the poor, but there is no infrastructure there. No running water, no drainage, no electricity. The logic tells us the killer didn't belong to the streets. He belonged to the elite. The missing tool wasn't a weapon. It was a medical facility. Again, it was a medical facility. Point 2 and 3. Evidence of absence in stage scenes. Now, look at where the bodies were found. Jackass Hill, the Cuyahoga River. They were dumped in public view, often near tracks. Apply point 2. Evidence of absence. There was no blood at the dump sites, not a drop. This proves the killings happened elsewhere. But look at point 3. Stage scenes. The killer would often leave bodies in a way that mocked the authorities. When a body is found clean, drained of blood, and positioned in a public square or a public space, the killer isn't hiding. He is communicating. Again, he is communicating. He is showing Eliot Ness that he has the space to commit a high-level medical procedure and move a heavy torso without being seen. He wasn't a butcher. He was an architect of anatomy. Again, he wasn't a butcher. He was an architect of anatomy. Point 5, human nature. Finally, look at the murders. They stopped in 1938. Why? Because Dr. Sweeney voluntarily committed himself to an asylum. Again, Dr. Sweeney voluntarily committed himself to an asylum. Human nature tells us that a serial predator doesn't stop just because the police burn down some shacks. They stop when their infrastructure is taken away. By locking himself in an asylum, Sweeney didn't just escape the law. He secured a place where he could no longer be audited. He spent the rest of his life sending taunting postcards to Eliot Ness. That isn't because the behavior of a madman, or rather, that isn't a behavior of a madman from the mud. That is the behavior of a high IQ narcissist who knew we had beaten the greatest lawman in America. He had beaten the greatest lawman in America. Conclusion, the verdict? The Mad Butcher wasn't a ghost in the shacks. He was a surgeon in a suit. Eliot Ness burned the shantytowns to hide the fact that the laboratory was in a place the law wasn't able to go. Logic doesn't stop at the hospital door. Again, logic doesn't stop at the hospital door. Case file 71 has closed the record. I'm nearing the end of my criminal investigations class. Case closed.